Let's take a quick tour of the user interface for FlashPrint. I'm not going to go into great detail on any of these options, but just to give you an idea of what's available. We've already seen that in the lower left-hand corner, you can change the machine model and nozzle size. In the upper left-hand corner, if you click the model icon, you can add models to the build plate in this way. You can have multiple models or just one, and you can also remove one or more models from here by clicking the trash can icon. Under FlashPrint, those are basic system options, so those will be different depending on what kind of computer you're using. Under File, you can create a new project or save a project. We'll talk about what a project is later, but for now, just know that that option is under File. You can load a file. So again, if I want to load an STL file to slice, I can do it that way. There are built-in examples that we'll look at later, and they come in handy for a variety of reasons. There's a model gallery that you can populate yourself with your own models. Just for instance, I'll click Add and add that model, and I'll look for another model to add. So I now have two models. And whenever I open FlashPrint and click on Model Gallery, those models will always be there. And I can click on any one of them and add to the platform and close, and there it is. I'll get rid of that. Continuing down on the recent files, just as you suspect, those are the most recent files that you loaded. We've already looked at preferences. Not many options here. You can change the font size, choose dark or light theme, and check automatically at startup for updates. I recommend turning that on and leaving that on so that you'll always be alerted when there's a new update available. That's it for the file menu. To look at the other options, I need to have a model on the build plate. So I'm going to go down to Examples and click on the 20mm box. Now you can see along the right-hand side, all of those icons have lighted up. They were most of them were grayed out before. Under Edit, there's an undo and redo, empty undo stack if you're doing lots of changes and you need to clear out the cache. Select all, duplicate is what you think it will do. If I click it, you can see it adds a second model. Now if I undo that, I'll mention that one of the icons on the right-hand side is duplicate as well. So if I click duplicate, and duplicate count is not the total number of objects that you want, it's the number of additional objects that you want. So if I leave that at 1 and click OK, it adds 1, but I have 2 total objects on the print bed. To deselect a selected icon, you might think that you just click off the option itself, but as you can see, it doesn't go away. If I click back on the model, it lights up and I can see the options. But to get rid of this dialog box, I need to click on the icon again to turn it off. So I'll use Control Z to get rid of that extra model and continue looking at Edit. Delete is self-explanatory. Next is a mirror option. With a cube, it's not going to show it very clearly, so I'm going to get rid of that and search for a hand model. I think I have one here, hand STL. Okay, so we'll open that, look at it from the front view. First, I will duplicate it, and now I will choose mirror in the X direction in this case. So you can see that I didn't just rotate the model, it actually created a mirror image. So I have a left and a right hand, essentially. I will choose Edit, select all, and then Edit, Delete to get rid of those. And under View, I'm going to choose Home View to set my screen back to the home view. And I'll go ahead and add the box back and continue with the Edit menu. Repair Models is grayed out now. That will appear automatically when you have a model that has problems with it. And we'll talk more about that later. Supports. That brings up the supports menu. If you have a model with overhangs, you need to include supports so that it will print properly. Click back to get rid of that. And I'll mention over on the right-hand side, one of the icons is for supports. And if I click that icon, I get the same supports menu. Wiping tower, you don't need to worry about for this machine. That's for a machine that uses multiple nozzles. Start dictation and emojis, I'm not sure why those are there. Under print, you can connect wirelessly to a printer. Click IP address and type in the IP address of your printer, and it will connect to FlashPrint, and you'll be able to send a print job to the printer wirelessly. View, you can view an model in perspective view or an orthographic view. Orthographic view allows you to see the flat surface head on. Perspective view is more naturalistic, but if you're trying to precisely aligned models or even just get a very precise view of a model, then orthographic view can be helpful. You have home view, top view, bottom, left, right, front, back. And all of those options are also available on the right-hand side. The top icon is view, and you'll see you have top, left, right, front view, back, and so forth. The bottom of the view menu, you have show model outline. What that does is it makes a sort of highlighted outline on the boundaries of your model. It can help with viewing the model more clearly, especially if you have a very complicated model. But most of the time, I leave that turned off. There's also a show steep overhang option, which can be turned on or off. It's a toggle. And that is very helpful to alert you to the fact that you're going to need to add supports to a model. Again, we'll look at that in much more depth later. Here is where you can also set the overhang threshold. So if an overhang is more than 45 degrees, then that area of the model will be highlighted in red to alert you to the fact that you're going to need supports. And lastly, you can enter full screen mode if you wish. Under the Tools menu, you have Multi-Machine Control, which allows you to connect to and control wirelessly multiple 3D printers. And you can even collect 3D printers into separate groups. So for instance, if you have two 3D printers in classroom A and one 3D printer in classroom B and 6 3D printers in the library, you can see and monitor and control all of the printers from within this interface. If you click Control Panel, this is what you see. You can control the movement of the print head and the print bed in the Z direction. You can speed up the print. You can adjust the temperature. So you could change the extruded target from 200 to 195, for instance, and then click apply, and the print temperature will go down. And similarly for the platform temperature. And if I had a print running, the chart at the bottom right of the screen would show the temperature. Next are onboard preferences. That allows you to rename machines so you can keep them more easily organized. And finally, machine information gives you some basic information about each individual printer as you select them individually. So the one I currently have selected is a FlashForge Finder 3, and the name is Finder 3. I haven't changed it. The version of the firmware that it's running, serial number, and so forth. And lastly, for the menu bar, under Help, you can search for help with a particular question. So for instance, if you forget where the mirror models function is, this will show you. Help contents will bring up a user guide for FlashPrint. You can provide feedback, contact FlashForge for support. You can check for updates. I'm currently running the latest version, so that's good. Model sharing. This is something we'll look at later. This refers to a cloud-based service that FlashPrint offers where you can upload models and share them with other people. And finally, about FlashPrint, tells you which version of FlashPrint you're running, and also where you can view changelogs for various updates that have happened in the past. If you're looking for a specific fix, you can search the changelogs, but you might not find it because all of them say at the end, other function optimization and bug modification. So there may be a fix that happened somewhere along the way that gets lumped into that general statement. So those are the menu options across the top of the FlashPrint user interface. Let's finish up with the icons along the right-hand side. We've already looked at View. The next one down is Move. For any of these to work, you need to have a model selected. So Move allows you to move the model. You can move it in increments by using the arrows. You can also move a model by typing in and hitting Enter. You can see here that I've raised the model 10 millimeters. If you're not sure if a model is flat on the build plate, you can click on Platform and it will drop it down to the platform. The dark blue color is indicating that that part of the model is flat on the platform. And if your model is not centered, an easy way to center it is to click Center. And you may have noticed that I can click and drag the model around using my mouse, but I can only do that when Move is selected. If I click on View and click on the model, nothing happens. All right, I'll click on Platform Center. The next icon down is Rotate. And again, I can use the arrows to rotate the model. I can jump in 90-degree increments by clicking the 90-degree symbol. Surface to platform is interesting. If I check that box now, you'll see that the rotation rings have disappeared. And I'm going to scroll in so we can see more closely. With surface to platform selected, anytime I double click a surface, that surface will be placed flat on the platform. So if I choose this surface, I'm going to double click and it stands the box up on end. It puts that surface flat onto the platform. And I can do that again. If I uncheck surface to platform, then I get all of my fine-tuning rotation options available again. And just as with move, when move was selected, I could click the model and move it around. With rotation selected, I can click on any of these rotation rings and drag the model to a different rotation. Click surface to platform, put it back down flat. And then to get rid of this dialog box, I click the rotate icon again and it disappears. Next is scale. Once again, you can scale by using the arrows. You can type in a number. So if I want the box to be 40 millimeters in the X direction, I type in the number and hit enter. Now notice the entire box was scaled up uniformly because uniform scaling is checked. If I uncheck uniform scaling, I can reduce the Y dimension to 10 millimeters, but the X dimension remains 40 and the Z dimension remains 20. And of course, you'll notice that you can increase and decrease by percentages on the side, and even switch to inches if you are producing a part that needs to fit properly with another part that's measured in inches instead of millimeters. And with scaling selected, if I click on the model itself and slide up or down on my mouse pad, I can quickly scale the object that way. The next icon on the right is cut. You can choose to cut along one axis or a second axis or along a third axis, or you can determine your own cutting angle by clicking and dragging. And then if I rotate, you can see where that axis is. Or if I'm looking at the model from the top, I can click and drag this way, and I'm determining which cutting axis I want to cut along. You have the option of keeping the two pieces in place after the cut occurs, or if that's unselected and you choose Start Cut, you can see that it separates the two pieces. Now these two pieces are separate. I can choose them independently of one another and rotate them and move them, resize them, do whatever I like. For now, I'll keep them the way they are and deselect Cut. Looking at the next option was Duplicate. We've already seen that. So with one part selected, I choose to add another copy of that same shape. Click OK, and there you can see there it is. The next option down is Auto Layout. If I click that, you can determine the space between the different parts on the print bed. In this case, it's 2 millimeters. I'll bump that up to 10 millimeters and then click OK. And you can see that it auto-arranged all the parts exactly 1 centimeter or 10 millimeters apart from one another. So that's a handy feature if you have lots of small parts on your print bed. Supports we've seen already. Wiping tower, that's another way to access this function, which you don't need for your particular printer. That's for multiple nozzle printers. Machine control is another way to access the machine controls that we saw under Tools. And then lastly, Connect to Machine, which we saw under the Print menu and Connect to Machine. So that's all of the menu options and the icon options in FlashPrint. The only thing we haven't covered is start slicing, but that will bring up all sorts of other options, and we'll cover those in future lessons.